Carter, the Power Bryant, joins us back in his normal slot as he does every Monday. Good to be back with him. He took a hiatus. I didn't really have a choice when LSU baseball was on, but he's back.
What's good, Blake?
Carter, I have the perfect coach for Northwestern.
All right, let's hear it.
Ed Orgeron.
I knew you were going to say it. Hey,
very quickly, how nuts is this story about Pat Fitzgerald getting fired?
Yeah, I give a lot of credit to the student journalists that did the work. I will tell you this.
That's who broke the news?
Yeah,
it was journalist?
It was student journalists. Yeah, they on-campus reporters. I will tell you this.
No way.
Yes, the Daily, man. They did some capital J real life-changing serious journalism. Like what me and you do, we're having fun. Like we're giving our opinions and all that stuff. That is so hard to do if you're a student journalist because what they tell you is don't, go against what the school is telling you to do. Don't make the school look bad. So I give all the reporters, it was like a group of them that got into it. And there have been other national guys that are starting to,
I mean, ESPN said they got the photos, videos, and text messages.
Right. But it was initially broken by the Daily. And it's hard to do that. It is hard to do that because they're going to the school. They're obviously going to be fans of the school. And that was very important journalism. Like, I mean, these were really bad things that happened. So shout out to them. That's difficult stuff to do whenever you're, looking into very serious stuff. And I give them a lot of credit. They're way better journalists than I ever was. I'll tell you that.
But it is highly interesting. Look, I mean, Carter, you have ESPN out there saying we got you dead to rights.
Yeah. And
they are not doing that if they don't have like a smoking gun.
Right. And right? That's what made the reporting so good is like, obviously,
they got Pat Fitzgerald's ass.
Yeah. They fired him, but it's not great. It was very disturbing, obviously.
Dude, he could see criminal charges behind this.
Oh, absolutely. It's really bad. For those that haven't read it, it's very disturbing. It's very sensitive in nature. So if that triggers anybody, that's to deal with it.
I mean, if hazing triggers you, grow up a little.
But if you have experienced stuff like that, it can be. Like it was that crazy. But look, that's hard stuff to do. That's hard stuff to do, man. So I don't know what. I mean, Pat Fitzgerald, honestly, on the field has regressed some. His team really been recent. It's tough. Northwestern obviously has.
I mean, they're hazing Carter, and they're 1-11.
I know
they suck. If this would have came out, and Harold asked what happened with Pat Fitzgerald. If you don't know, Pat Fitzgerald at Northwestern got fired today for a hazing allegation that, I mean, they got confirmation of pretty much. I mean, they have whiteboards and them like writing players down, calling it runaholic and making players run until they throw up and pass out and stuff like that. Like that's insane. Okay.
Yeah.
It's players allegedly getting beat up if they don't do it. It's nasty. So Carter, let's talk a little LSU and some SEC here. Jayden Daniels, Josh Williams, and Mekhi Wingo are the three players that are going to Nashville. Surprised because I am not.
No, those are the three. I predicted Jayden and Mekhi, and then my third was some combination of Will, Malik, or Greg Brooks. But Josh Williams obviously is a great pick. Former walk-on. Could you imagine being a former
and team
walk-on?
Captain? Remember if you remember during the season, he was named like they'd already done the 4 captains. And because of how big he had been for the team, they went ahead and made him a captain too.
I love it. And I'm really excited about that. That lets everyone know that Josh is still going to be a big part of what they're doing next year. And he wasn't just good. He was truly spectacular. He made some truly breathtaking runs and blocks and plays for LSU. So it wasn't just, hey, you hit the hole, it's a wide open gap, anybody can run through it. It was him making a lot of things happen on his own accord, along with good blocking, everything else around it. So I'm really excited for Josh. The other two shouldn't really surprise anyone, especially with all the off-season, off-field stuff that Wingo has gotten positively, for being the hardest worker, Iron Tiger, all that good stuff. So really excited. And for those that have never really experienced SEC Media Days, you're doing 100 interviews minimum, each and every one of them. You're doing like 50 radio hits, and then you're going from press room to press room to press room.
Why am I going?
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. And you get asked the same questions over and over again. So it's tough, but it's also a really fun experience.
Do you think this closes a door on a 2-quarterback system?
Yes and no. I think it had, even if you were in, let's just say Brian Kelly was saying, hey, I want to play Garrett Nussmeier a lot versus Florida State. Jayden needed to be the guy going to SEC Media Days, right? I think anyone that watched the destroying video or whatever, he just represents university so well, and that's a guy that I think everybody wants to rally behind. This is Jayden's year 5.
It's not like he's not really freaking good.
No, he's very good as well.
I mean,
him moving second in the Heisman odds. These SEC Media Day stuff is important, right? Because a lot of people that
Heisman hype.
Yeah, and there's going to be voters there, right? And one positive experience with one voter could be the difference. It could be how, a national writer at The Athletic or whoever it may be feels about writing about you. They might want to put more stuff about you if they have a very positive experience with you. And the one thing Jayden does, and it's hard. Like, I get excited. It's my favorite thing, I do every week, is talking football with you. Jayden, one thing he does a really good job of, he smiles the entire time in every interview that he does. That's hard to do. And that's him not knowing what questions are going to be asked to him. So obviously it's going to be very good for a potential Heisman campaign for a guy that we would love to see hoist a trophy.
What do you think LSU does in running back?
I think there's tiers. I do. I think there is a group of 3 guys that are in a separate, they're going to get a lion's share of the carries early on in the season. And I think that's Logan Diggs, Josh Williams, and Kane. I feel like those 3 guys are going to.
How does Emory get involved here?
I'm still a believer in John. Obviously, he played his best against Auburn and Alabama, and in particular the Auburn game. But I feel those 3 are the guys that LSU wants to be their people. Right.
What about Goodwin?
I think Armani obviously is going to come down to his health. I think that's the first thing, Blake. But I also think those other guys are just better at this point. Obviously, Armani's got a home run hitting ability, but I think Kane, Williams, and Diggs, they may not be as purely fast as Armani Goodwin, but I just think they're more complete. And I think people will be very shocked with Logan Diggs as how complete of a back he has been at Notre Dame. And one thing, Blake, that really stood out to me about Logan is his pass protection. He's been a good pass protector.
He has.
At Notre Dame. Yeah, and his best pass protection reps really began as a true freshman. And that is hard to do. That's a very hard thing because you don't really do that a whole lot in high school, right? So I really like Logan. I really, really do. He's my kind of back, Blake. And you can pause me all you want. I like my running backs thick, baby. You gotta have some.
You could have passed on that comment, man.
No, I'm not passing. I like them thick. In the SEC, historically, you've got to be thick. There are not many small backs that have succeeded in general at LSU, and there's not many small.
Are we talking like Megan the Stallion thick? Like that's how thick you want them?
I want thick as a brick, baby. I want them thick. I'm telling you, it matters. It's simple physics, man. It's simple physics. The linebackers and everybody's just bigger. I will do this. If anybody wants to do this, I did a whole week on this last year. the backs that have succeeded in college football that are under 205 have mostly been in other conferences. Whereas in the SEC, you really have got to have the weight. You just do. Unless you are truly spectacular with the football in your hands. Like Jahmyr Gibbs is one of those guys. He is truly spectacular with the football in his hands. But most of LSU's best backs have been big guys, right? Most of Alabama's backs have been big guys. Go through it. Go running for yourself, and you will see. And that's one thing I like about Logan, man. He's got that size. He's a good, solid 215 minimum. So I know he's ready for the.
You know what else, man? Caleb Jackson's 226.
He's a unit, right? Like
I'm going to tell you, Carter, this might be the ultimate hot take.
Let's go.
I think by the end of the year, he's RB1.
Ooh, that's spicy. That's really spicy.
It's spicy. Man, Blake, I'm pretty sure, Carter, it's my spiciest take so far.
No, I like it.
And you know how spicy I can get. But listen, because of baseball, I haven't been out here using my normal spice.
No, bring it up, baby. Crank it up.
I think he's going to be Well, let me say this. If he's not RB1, he's definitely getting majority of the carries.
Ooh. All right. So here's my thoughts on Caleb Jackson.
All right. Give it to me.
I liked him a lot. I really do. He ended up being
Carter, he's 226 with a 4.440.
Yeah. I mean, he's a sub 11-100.
Anyway, sorry, continue.
So he's got the, like, if you want a SEC running back, he's it. He's it, like, as far as size and speed is concerned. Now, obviously, he didn't really play that much last year because he was injured. So
and they kept him out on purpose. He could have come back from the playoffs, just for reference.
Right. So they did right by him to get him ready, especially at running back. So
and they could have won it all with him too, which is kind of
right. Yeah. And with the football in his hands, he is very McFadden-like with his cuts. He's far more downhill than, like, let's say, like a Darius Geis who had a lot of bounce, right? I really like Caleb a lot. I'm with you on that. I would not shock me if he plays a lot this year. And look, one guy that is loved, and this, Blake, probably way more than I do, but people love Trey Holly. They really do. And
Carter, I just don't think he's going to see playing time.
I don't think so either. Year one, I'm telling you right now, you could think Trey is the absolute most special guy with the football in his hands, and I think
he will be. He will be a great back.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like I truly do think he is special, and I feel like he probably has a little bit more make you miss ability than Caleb Jackson does.
Right.
But the SEC, I'm telling you right now, Trey Holly is not a big guy. He was 180, 185, 190 in high school. It is hard to put on the proper weight to succeed in the Southeastern Conference, right? And once again, it's just simple physics. The linebackers and the defensive linemen are just so much bigger in the SEC, and it's hard to absorb that contact. And look, that's obviously something that Trey in year two, he'll probably be the size that you need to be. Right. So I think Trey is really special with the football in his hands, but I'm with you on Caleb Jackson. This guy has got elite athleticism.
A team that we don't talk about a lot, the team that a lot about, that I'm going to talk about when you leave, the Arkansas Razorbacks. I should have asked you this with Jayden, but somebody in the text thread reminded me. So I'm going to circle back really quickly, and I want to go to some other things. Is Jayden Daniels better than KJ?
All right. So I like Jayden better than KJ. I just want that to be clear because I've been labeled as, KJ Jefferson.
Yeah, the homer.
Yeah. Here's what I love about KJ Jefferson. Okay. He has had very little to work with. And this year, he has got way less to work with than what he had last year. And
he had a first-round wide receiver now. Like, he's had some pieces.
Well, no, that was 2 years ago.
But he had 2 guys drafted this year, right?
He had a center and a wide receiver.
Receivers. The Underwood kid, whatever. Like he had 2 guys that got drafted, I thought, right?
No, that guy didn't get drafted. The 5-star that they had come in, and he wasn't really that good. I think his best game was like 50 yards receiving.
Okay.
And he had Matt Landers, who was Matt Landers was a really good receiver for them, but he really didn't start coming on until a little bit later in the year. Here is my favorite thing about KJ Jefferson is he carried Arkansas through so many games last year.
Agreed.
Where they would probably have been a 3-win team if he was not their quarterback. And, looking throughout the SEC, I felt he was the most valuable player in the SEC to his team. Now, not the best. Bryce was still, to me, the best quarterback in the SEC. But when it comes to value, they would not have beaten Missouri State. Right. They probably wouldn't have beaten Auburn. That BYU game got crazy in Provo. Their defense was absolutely hot dog water.
Atrocious.
And they're all their best defensive players are just 4- and 5-star transfers, holdovers. Drew Sanders, Landon Jackson. I think you remember him.
He's going to media day,
right? And McLaughlin. So this team just was not good at all, and he carried them through a lot last year. So, yeah, I would put KJ at number 1, and then I would put, Jayden at number 2. I would. Now, and then, whoever you want to put in number
best. Not the most value is what I'm asking.
I would say KJ is still the best. I would say he's number 1.
It's just so tough for me, Carter, to say that for me to go there when you could make the argument that, yes, Jayden Daniels had more weapons on the outside. He still also had 4 rotating freshmen that he was going besides, too, and still took down Bama.
Oh, don't get it twisted. Jayden had an absolutely fantastic year. But here is something else I'll bring up by KJ.
KJ lost to Liberty.
Yeah, he didn't have a shoulder. He didn't practice all that week.
That's a part of the problem.
Yeah, so he did not practice all that week, and you saw their backup quarterback situation. They had the worst backups in the SEC, so he had to play. He couldn't throw the ball 30 yards. And
can he throw the ball 30 yards now?
He is not the best deep ball thrower. I'll tell you that. That is not his best thing. But, here's one thing I will say about KJ.
I mean, that was a stupid question, but I think y'all get what I'm asking.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He has not had a bad Power 5 game at Arkansas last year. He did not have one single one. Now, he had some bad moments.
Okay,
he had some bad moments, but I don't think he had one bad. What I would consider a bad Power 5 game. The Alabama game, nobody was really getting open. And then, Texas A&M game, he had that really bad fumble. And look, he did miss throws, and he's still far from a finished product. But it is a lot to carry that Arkansas Razorback team. And I'll tell you this. I am not in love with them losing Kendall Browse and them having the same level of success. And they also lost their center, who was a really good player, was a 3rd-round pick by the Commanders, and we'll see. But then after that, obviously, there's a lot of different quarterbacks that I feel could move themselves in that 1st and 2nd team All-SEC range. But Blake, I think that would be more because of what they are surrounded by. So, like, Joe Milton's going to put up big numbers this year. Obviously, Carson Beck is, if he breathes, anybody could throw to Brock Bowers. Anybody. So I think there are other quarterbacks in the SEC who will be good. But the next thing I would bring up about the quarterback position in the SEC, Blake, is there's a lot of really good quarterbacks that left. They're gone. And those quarterbacks are going to be so tough to replace. And the fact that you get Jayden back and your OC back and your top receiver, top tight end, and your 2 tackles back, Jayden has a very good chance finishing as 1st team All-SEC this year.
If he does that, are you playoff bound?
Yeah, absolutely. If he
so let's pull the cat out of the bag. We talked about this, but we didn't go into detail. And this is the last question because I think it's going to be extended.
Let's do it.
Is it playoff or bust for this team?
I would say yes. I would. Now,
so you're really high that they're going to win the West. They're going to take down Florida State, and that their only loss potentially would be Georgia's. What I'm hearing you say.
Okay. We've all talked about the Brian Kelly quote, and I totally get it. And when you
masking expectations, Carter,
right.
You know that, and I know that. Carter, I have a video from him 3 months ago, literally saying we need to be championship ready. Right. So but continue.
Yeah, I just don't think if you were to ask during any other period in LSU history, you're returning once again your QB, your 2 offensive tackles. So we're talking about the 3.
You're returning your offensive line, baby. Garrett Dellinger started enough where you can call him a starter at some point.
Right. Yeah, LSU is like top half of snaps return on the offensive line.
They're number 3 of total production returning. Right.
Yeah. So when you're returning all that and you're returning, one of your best defensive players you've ever seen at the university who's might not have even hit his prime yet, it's hard for me to not put those expectations on this team. Now, what I would say, Blake, is, and I won't go too deep into this tonight. We might be able to next week. There are some metrics that have been predictive of previous college football playoff teams to the next year that LSU's last year's roster did not live up to the expectation. So here's a stat. Game control, right? So game control is how you actually control the game. How much do you dominate the opponents you played? Okay. So LSU last year, they won the West, and no one would disagree that actually being a good thing. But there were a lot of chaotic games and a lot of games that
like Florida was hairy early, Ole Miss was hairy early, Auburn was hairy.
Yes. So the Florida and Ole Miss games, I think we can all agree offensively, LSU was dominant, and defensively, they eventually figured it out outside of that one long Anthony Richardson run, right? So the 3 games in particular were the Arkansas game, the Mississippi State game, and the Auburn game, where offensively you were very anemic and defensively you were opportunistic as well, okay? So what that means is normally the previous year's teams that make it to the college football playoff the next year were dominant that previous season. LSU was a very successful team last year, but Blake, one thing that you cannot state at all is they were not a dominant team, right? And that's okay. If you win, you win, right? You win any way you possibly can. It's hard to go out there and win. But normally college football playoff teams are dominant from the year before to this next year. And this is something that I've been talking about a lot on my channel and just in general. LSU this next season, you might not get Greg Brooks making one of the best interceptions you will ever see. You might not get Coy Moore throwing away Auburn's game like he did in that game. You might not get those breaks, right? So, next year, one thing, if you truly want to believe LSU has taken that next leap, Blake, is are they beating teams down? Are you enforcing your will? Are you hammering home teams by the second, third, and fourth quarter? And that will let you know as a fan that this team is a for real college football playoff contender.
Okay, that's still a lot to unpack. So, number one, I do agree that historically that happens.
Oh, yeah.
I can also say that you've seen teams like Georgia also be in these slugger matches too. Like can I tell you, you're not going to agree with this, and that's okay.
That's fine. Let's hear it.
I think metrics like that can be bullshit. Because I think that you have to that game control does not tell the story of what's happening. Because Tennessee in game control, I just looked this up while we were talking about this, they were horrendous in game control, won 10 games. You know who else was horrible in game control? Ohio State and Michigan at times. So when I look at some of these top teams that are making the playoff, Carter, I do just ask this simple question. Yeah, but I don't know. I agree with what you're saying on that. You got to be dominant, but game control, I think, is a little bit.
Oh no, and look, that was just one metric that historically shows constant that you're taking, you're dominating teams, and you are for real a really, really good football team.
Agreed.
Where I would push back though is Tennessee was really good in game control this year. They blew us out. They blew some other teams that weren't really that good out. And that's the thing. LSU really didn't.
Yeah, but they struggled with Alabama. They struggled with Pitt. They got beat by South Carolina. And at the end of the year, they're struggling with Clemson, who's starting a true freshman quarterback. There are okay, are you beating down Austin Peay? Because there's no reason that team had any business playing Pittsburgh and almost getting beat.
I disagree, because historically, teams that play the second game early in the season on the road don't play their best football. They don't. So it's hard early in the season to do that. Okay, perfect example, 2019 LSU. That was a tough game to go on the road and play Texas, and that game was really back and forth. It's hard to.
We're talking about a 10-win Texas team versus a 7-8-win Pitt team. Like, as much as I might not like Texas, they still had guys like Malcolm Roach starting with the Saints. Like,
but Pitt went 9-4 that year, and I think Texas was what, like 7-8. They were like an 8 or 9 win team. I don't remember. But the point being, I totally agree with you. Game control isn't the absolute perfect metric, but normally taking that next leap that next year. And by the way, Tennessee didn't make the playoff. So the teams that truly are dominant. So it's a good question. I see D. Will in here. LSU 2018, their game control and average win probability were both in the top 10. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just not going to take the best team of all time to use with this team's.
Well, no. He was asking about 2018.
I know, but dude. Can I tell you something spicy?
Let's hear it.
I'm not comparing teams to 2019 anymore.
Okay. But what I would say is, you look at the college football playoff teams as a whole, there have been 4 teams that took massive leaps.
I agree with that.
But here's the thing. That's not me saying that LSU is not going to be able to do it. It's just one thing. And look, Brian Kelly knows this, right? He knows last year, and he even said it, after the Auburn game. Brian Kelly, you hear him say process over results and all of that. Well, he knows that you can't win games like how LSU won some games last year. And there might be something.
I'm not saying you can. You can't have Auburn again. You're going to get beat.
Right. And I think that's going to be the next leap, is can this LSU offense in particular just punish teams at will? I mean, right out of the gate. And that's going to be so important for them next year, because you go through the schedule from last year, they really struggled to get going early. Right. And that was, it's just something you just can't do. Like, you just can't get away with so many slow starts that they had offensively. Now, I love this team. But it's just that they would tell you that as well. And getting right out of the gates and having a good script. I'm
not disagreeing with that. I hope people.
Oh, yeah.
I don't disagree. I'm just saying, like, the overall.
No, you can. I like it when people poke holes. Anybody that disagrees, go right on ahead.
No, and I'm not saying that. Like, I don't want to be labeled as someone who thinks that they can't get out to a fast start. Like, I'm not saying that. What I'm just saying is that game control, beating a team by, like you did against Mississippi State when you're only up 14 with 7 minutes to go, like, that's still a really, like, that game was in hand for over 9-10 minutes. Right,
like the State game.
Yeah, Carter, you're up 2 scores with and they hadn't scored since the second quarter, right? Like, you had gone the whole, So I mean, I get what you're saying. All right, last one. Speaking of Mississippi State,
let's hear it.
I'll just do these things with you. Usually, I do them on myself. I might reference them later. in the week because we're coming up on time here. What do you think about Mississippi State?
I'm fading them big time, Blake. Look,
I am too.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I would never wish what happened to them on them. That was just the absolute worst thing to happen. I'm a big fan of Mike Leach. I'm a big fan of the air raid, obviously. And there was it was so tough to decide if you were going to have the Zach Arnett situation be an interim situation or a permanent situation. What they should have done is just kept him for an interim to see if it worked. But they went on ahead and signed him. Now, he didn't get like a Brian Kelly contract, but still, I'm not a big fan of Will Rogers. He's a little one-dimensional. Really? I'm not. I just don't like this situation not being in the short pass, air raid offense. I didn't like that they lost the skill position guys that they lost. But as you know, Blake, I'm a big Xavier Thomas fan, and I think he's going to be a really good player. He's a 3-star kid out of New Orleans that I like a lot. And then obviously defensively, they lost some really good pieces there as well. Your guy, you're the president of the Emmanuel Forbes fan club. He was so good for them, and now he's gone.
He was elite. Like, he was an elite college football player that we didn't talk about.
Right. Like he is.
He broke the SC record in pick sixes. He broke the SC record in picks. Like, at what point do I sit here and say, like, the most untalked about name in the SEC, maybe in its history, that played an elite level? Emmanuel Forbes.
Right. I'm with you on that. He was so good. He was so good.
So good, man.
And yeah, I mean, I don't know if he's like in like the Champ Bailey, Patrick Peterson tier, but he's like probably in that next tier of just all-time great SEC corners. He really was good. And you lose that, you lose his leadership, you lose all that goes along with it. I'm just fading them. Now, their schedule does set up, nicely. They get a, week 2 game versus Arizona before they welcome LSU, and obviously we'll see how that works out. But yeah, I'm just fading them. I'd probably go under their win total going into next year.
Sucks for them, man. I hate it. All right, my buddy. We'll see you next week.
Remember, thick running backs all day. Let's go. We'll see you, buddy.